Hi everyone, Elsie Jensen here. Tonight we are going to do some pan-fried flounder. We're going to cook up some herby rice, blanch and sear some snap peas, make some sweet potatoes, and then some biscuits. So I've got a lot to do here, but let's first get our rice going. So I've got 2 cups of plain rice. We're going to give them a rinse in our sink. You always want to rinse your rice for just a few minutes. It just ends with a higher quality rice. Gets any of that arsenic out or whatnot's in it. But I find just giving it a quick rinse just makes for a much better end product. It makes it less starchy in there, so you won't get mushy rice. We're going to add this here to 3 cups of water. And then I'm going to turn my back burner onto high. We're going to start it on high. I'm going to do kind of a chicken flavor to it. So we're going to put in a big scoop of chicken bouillon. So it gives it a nice flavor in it. Because, you know, if you're having food that has a sauce, then you don't need a flavored rice. But when the rice is going to kind of be a side dish, you don't want it to be bland. So I'm giving it a nice stir. And then I'm going to cut up some fresh herbs and toss them in there as well. And then we'll put also, let's do a little drizzle of olive oil, about a tablespoon or so. And let's grab, we'll do a green onion or 2 in here. They want to come out. There we go. We'll do some fresh parsley to kind of cook it up, give it a little seasoning. Don't need too much. And then we'll add a little bit of dried oregano. So we have a couple of herbs all around for our rice. Oh, this is sealed weird. Finally, got a new oregano. You always feel like when you get down to you used up a spice and you're like, ooh, I now have a fresh spice. So we're going to add about I want to say a teaspoon and a half of dried oregano. And then let's mince these up real quick and get our rice going, because the rice is the thing that's going to take kind of the longest on here. So we want to get it going first. So we're going to do this. But this is going to be one of our side dishes to our flounder. We're also going to blanch and then pan sear or fry, saute up some snap peas. And we're going to roast up some sweet potatoes in the oven. And we're going to prep our sourdough breads for tomorrow night. We when I went outside to pick some fresh sage, because I'm going to do a kind of a sage onion garlic loaf for our new sourdough, we found a toad. So then, of course, we had to get all the kids and we had to play with the toad for a little while before we finally let it go. But it took up a little bit longer, but they were excited. This was the first toad we've seen of the year. So it's always fun. We're going to put these right in here. And then we're going to give them a nice stir. And then once this comes to a nice rolling boil, we can put the lid on and let it turn it down to low. But we're just going to give it a stir because you want to stir it a lot in the beginning so it doesn't stick. Okay, we got those. Let's get our sweet potatoes cooked up now for our dinner. So I'm just going to do a quick kind of peel on them using my knife. So I'm going to chop off the ends, and then we're just going to kind of cut along the skin out there. I find this just works a lot better than a peeler for sweet potatoes.
What type of fish are you going to batter it?
We are doing flounder, and we are going to just do kind of like an herb crust on it and then a pan fry. So not a batter today. After a couple heavy meals over the weekend, I wanted something a little bit lighter in our fare. So just an herb crusted, so not a true thing. Although I'm thinking I'm going to do cod soon. Like last time I did cod, everyone wasn't, the kids weren't exactly the biggest fan of it, but I love cod. So I might do a beer battered cod coming up. Because I just think that would be delicious.
And what is the taste and texture of flounder?
It's like most white fishes. If you want, it's a thinner. If you, I don't see here, but they're thinner fillets, so they'll kind of crisp up nicely, and they have more of a mild white fish flavor to them. They really kind of pick up any of the seasonings that you use for it. But they're I will say they have a bit more fishy taste than tilapia. Tilapia, I feel like, is your plain Jane when it comes to whitefish. But flounder is it's a nice kind of thing. It's not quite as thick of a cut, but it is nice and delicious still. There we go. Get these. I always say sweet potatoes are such a pain because they're always such an awkward shape, and they're actually much firmer and harder to cut through than most people think. So we're going to just do we're going to cube them up. We'll give them a nice dress with some olive oil and oregano and garlic, salt, and pepper. And then we'll have them roast in the oven while we're prepping the rest of our food. Here we go. Missed a piece. And we're just going to do kind of nice, small, cubed size things because sweet potatoes cook up pretty fast. They get nice and tender. You just want to try to get them as even in size as possible. But they do cook up faster than regular potatoes. Here we go. Get these on. And again, we'll slice through them. And then we're going to blanch our snap peas, which I love snap peas. And typically when I do them like a teriyaki way, like with a stir fry. But I just think they're such a good underutilized vegetable. So we're just going to do kind of like a garlic sear on them, like a pan after we blanch them. We'll just pan fry them with a little bit of garlic, and I think they'll just be delicious.
Do you have a question for the way you peel sweet potatoes? Do you feel like you could do it slower and get more of the sweet potatoes saved?
You don't lose much of the sweet potato. So I'm just cutting off here, but I like to do it this way because if you look here, you see that really white stuff? That is like the drier part of the sweet potato, and it doesn't cook up as nice. I like getting to the oranger flesh. And so this method works really well versus if you wanted to use a hand peeler, then a hand peeler would allow you to get, really close, but you don't end up losing all that much. A lot of that is just skin. So you don't lose as much as it looks like. But it gives you the tender pieces versus the more dried out outer skin. Like here's a couple of the sweet potatoes still have that whitish part on it. It's not quite as good. Okay. We're going to throw these all on my baking sheet here. And then we're going to toss them with some olive oil, garlic, salt, and dried oregano. Just kind of a simple seasoning and a little black pepper, but it's one of my favorite way to roast sweet potatoes. I prefer savorier, I don't even know if that's a word, sweet potatoes versus like sweet ones. So we're going to give more savory. That's right. There we go. I was like, that didn't sound right. But I'm like a person who likes the salty stuff. So we have put about 2 tablespoons of olive oil. We're going to give a good shake of garlic salt. Yes, garlic salt has the best flavor to it. A little bit of pepper, about a half a teaspoon of pepper. And then we're going to use about a teaspoon and a half of dried oregano. There we go. A little bit more. And then we're going to give this a nice toss. And you just want to make sure that you get your sweet potatoes all covered up in that oil. That is going to prevent them from drying out. So they'll still get like a nice kind of crunch on the outside, but they won't dry out and get like a papery texture. So you just want to make sure you get them all coated up. Now that we have them coated, we're going to spread them out. I'm going to give my hands a quick rinse and we'll pop these in the oven.
You have a question? A lot of people use Old Bay seasoning on fish. Do you?
Ta-da! I will be using it on there. Old Bay seasoning is it's really just like a seasoned salt. It's nothing like I think it has celery salt in it, paprika or whatnot. So it's really just like a seasoned salt, but it's delicious and it pairs well with it. So yes, we will be using it today because it just adds a nice flavor to it. But it's nothing like, oh, it screams seafood. If you look at like the ingredients on it, it's, what is it? Let's see if we can actually see. Celery salt, and then red pepper, black pepper, and paprika, and a little bit of extra spices, which is probably like marjoram and stuff like that.
I think they show seafood on the front.
I know it is used for seafood is like the biggest thing, but it's nothing that you were like, oh, this is like the magic thing with it. I was reading that and I was like, oh, I could make this in my own cabinet, but it's the paprika and I think it's marjoram that's in it or whatnot. They don't list their spice in there, but that's what I think it is. Let's give our rice a quick little stir here. Once it gets to a boil, we can put our lid on it. Okay. Let's get our biscuits going. So those can go in the oven and then we'll start seasoning up our fish. Okay, I normally make my own biscuits, but these are a favorite in here. And Torn was like, when are you going to make these biscuits again? And I said, oh, well, you know what? Flounder and lobster, it goes perfect. You know, it's like the Little Mermaid here. So we're going to cook them up with them. And we'll have it. These, by the way, are delicious. I tried to make my copycat version of them and you just can't match it. Like I made a cheddar biscuit on there, a sourdough one, and it just didn't work as well.
I don't know if you covered it. People want to know what's the temperature and how long.
Yes, so the temperature is at 425 and I'm going to cook them for about 20 or so minutes. I'll probably take them out right when I take out the biscuits that go in, and these need about 15 minutes. Sweet potatoes are pretty forgiving. So you can leave them in there for 5 or so minutes after their thing and they're fine. They have a while before they go bad, like get overcooked. So I kind of, when I look in there, I'll peek at them and just see how they look. And that's when I know they're done. But it's about 20 to 25 minutes, you know, depending on what temperature. They cook faster. I like to either do between 400 and 425. Those tend to be the best temperature to cook it off. If you go any slower, they just take too long and then they get like sweaty potatoes. Okay, so we got 2 of our bags of our biscuit mix, which needs 1.5 cups of water. This is, again, not much work here, but they are delicious.
You have a question? Do you use kosher salt?
You know what? I really just use any type of salt that's around here. Most of the time, if I'm savoring something savory, I use garlic salt because it adds a little extra flavor. And baking, I just use, you know, the good old fashioned, what is it? That like idolized salt, you know, the one with the umbrella on it, that one. So sometimes I have used like the coarse salt and whatnot, but I've also had it where it doesn't dissolve all the way. I remember one time I used it in something and my brother was like, is there glass in here? And I was like, oh no, that's just a salt crystal that didn't dissolve all the way. So I have used it in there, but I just typically stick with the one because it works for everything. We're going to put in about 2 handfuls of cheese. I put in a little more than the recipe says because I think it tastes better. And my method of doing it is about 2 handfuls, which I think is like closer to 2 cups versus, or 1.5 cups versus the 1/2 cup per box. So it's about 50% more cheese, but I think it tastes better. Okay, so we'll give this a nice mix. These are just drop biscuits, but they're, again, delicious. I'm like the other day I made like, you know, the cheddar cheese and chive, trying to be like, oh, these are like that. But my son, who has the most discerning taste, told me they were not nearly as good as Red Lobster's biscuits, although he said they were still good. Let's get our baking sheet out. I also make my biscuits bigger than the recommended size on there, so we alter it a little bit. And put a layer of baking or baking parchment on here. That's just going to make it easier cleanup. Let's give this one last stir. I think we're almost getting to a nice hot boil here where we can turn it down. This is going to be our nice herby rice. Again, that's always the thing that takes the longest. Let's get these biscuits dropped out for here because these are going to be delicious. And then we're going to do our fish next. So I like to do just big old honkin' biscuits. You know, I feel like you feel better when you eat one biscuit versus two, even though your biscuit is the size of two. Okay. And spread them out. These take a little bit longer to bake when they're bigger, but it's not that much longer. But it prevents them from drying out. Sometimes, you know, biscuits, if you overcook them, they go bad fast because they get so dry. These, when you make them a little bit bigger, are nice. They'll poof up just a little bit, but not much. Okay. Let's get these. Our rice is now at a good rolling boil. So this is, I'll do our last stir, and then we're going to turn the temperature down to low. And then we're going to add our lid to it. I'm going to do it slightly canted in the beginning, and then so hopefully it doesn't boil over.
Good question. What fruit are you having tonight, and have you gotten rid of all the bananas yet?
No, I was just talking about how I needed to make banana bread or banana donuts. So we've still got a lot left over. So they've been at the stage where nobody wants to eat them now, and they're really only good for baking. And so I just have to take the plunge and start doing them. So I think but you know, when you make banana bread and banana things, I like my bananas to be closer to the black stage versus like the speckled brown, because the darker and darker they get, the more sweet they'll be. So I am waiting for them to get a little bit darker. That will make the best banana bread because that's when they are the sweetest and have the strongest flavor. Okay. Almost got these guys out. We're going to do a hammy melon. I have this big, huge hammy melon that is ready to cut up because we've eaten through all of our other melons that we had. And this one, I ordered it, and I swear they found like the largest hammy melon out there when I ordered it from like Whole Foods or whatnot, and it was huge. Okay, we've got our biscuits. We're going to pop these in the oven. And what I'm going to do is when I pop these in the oven, I'm going to move my sweet potatoes down because I always like my baked goods to be on top. They tend to get a better cook on them, and versus potatoes can go down. You can see them. They're nice simmering. They got a nice bright orange. Starting to get tender. And then I'm going to set the clock here for 15 minutes. And that will call me over. Let me know when they're ready. And then, of course, we'll top them with the delicious herby butter that comes with. But let's get our fish seasoned up here. And so we've got our flounder fillets here. And so we're going to season them through with some Old Bay, oregano, paprika, and black pepper. So we're going to do each side. Here, let me get my top back on here. I love oregano with fish. I think it tastes really great. I just love oregano in general. It's one of those spices that has slowly become my favorite in the years. I just think it adds such a great flavor to things. Okay. Let's get these. We've got a good amount. So I probably used about a teaspoon or so on the first one. Then we're going to add a little bit of paprika. You don't need this one as much. I'm going to give it a good shake first. That way it doesn't clump down.
Yeah, the question about the hammy melon, what does that one taste like?
It is, so it looks like a cantaloupe, but it tastes sweeter like a honeydew, but it has the texture of an Asian pear. So it has a crunch to it, but it's delicious. It's it's one of their favorite melons out of all of them. And I think they're in season right now because I've seen them everywhere. Okay, we've got a little bit of that. We're going to shake. I'm going to do my pepper up high so it spreads out evenly with less on there. And then we're going to do our Old Bay. We're going to shake this on. There we go. We want to make sure you get it all. This is going to get your saltiness into here. So you want a good shake over here. So we're probably going to use about a half a teaspoon or a teaspoon on this side, and we'll flip it over knowing that some of it will fall off. And now we're going to flip it over and season up the other side of our flounder. We've got some big fillets here.
You have a question? Have you started your garden yet?
I have not started. I was thinking about it this weekend. Every weekend I say I'm going to do it, and then I just run out of time. But I told Evie that this weekend we were going to go, this coming weekend, because we just have one soccer game this weekend, which is like a miracle. So I think we're going to go. This one, we just did lots of fun Easter stuff, Easter egg hunts, Easter dyeing. Our neighborhood had an Easter egg hunt. So this one was busy. But next weekend, I think we're going to go. I said she really wants to do a fairy garden, and it's finally time. We've had really nice weather. I was like, it's time. And I want to get, my biggest thing that I want to get right away is my herbs. I want to get them going just because I use fresh herbs in everything I cook. And it's so much nicer when you don't have to pay for them. You can just harvest them right out of your garden. Okay. I used to, one year I tried to do the whole germinate and start and do it myself in my house. That was just a disaster. It took up so much space. And so I was like, you know what? We're just going to buy them. Okay. We've got our herb things here. I'm going to give my hands a quick rinse. We're going to heat up some oil to start sauteing them in. And before we do that, we are going to drop our snap peas into this hot water that I have. We're going to blanch them real quick, which means we're just going to cook them for a few minutes in hot water. And that will allow them to get tender before we saute them up. Here we go. Perfect. And let's see, we're going to start making our base for our 2 sourdough so we can do our inclusion, because I don't want to cook up my fish until towards the end, because fish cooks up very fast and I want it to stay hot for everyone. So we're going to prep our sourdough bread first. So we've got our 2 bowls here, and we're going to start out with our base loaf for both of them, and then we're going to do an inclusion on the other one, which will be our sage, caramelized onions, and garlic. So we're going to saute that up. I picked a bunch of fresh sage out of my garden right before this. That's when we found our toad. Okay, we're going to add 100 grams of active starter. So your starter should be nice and bubbly, and make sure it's on grams, not ounces. There we go. And so we fed our starter right after or during our lunchtime stream so that it's nice and active. You have to make sure you feed it. I like to do it between 4 to 8 hours beforehand. That gives me the best. It makes the best bread. If I go any longer past 8 hours, then it doesn't give me enough rise in my bread. And 100 grams in here as well. Good. And now you want to add 375 grams of warm water. So I have this water, just tap warm water, and then 375 grams, and we're going to do that to each one. So I will say it's super simple. It's a super easy recipe, but this has been the one that has been like successful every single time. I've like changed it around, but this is like my magic ratio. Now there are certain recipes I do have to change up the base of it, especially if I'm doing like a more seasoned bread, like a pumpkin sourdough, then you have to change that up, the ratios, just because of the liquid in the pumpkin. But for my basic, for just regular inclusions, the 100 grams of active starter, 375 of water, and 500 of bread flour, and then about 2 teaspoons of salt is magic. So I'm just using my dough whisk here. We're just going to make sure it all gets diluted up. I'm going to use my tongs real quick and toss my snap peas. They're almost ready. They've got a nice vibrant green. That's when you know that they are about done blanching. Where did I put my salt? Here. And I want about 2 teaspoons of salt. So I'm just going to use my hands. It's about 8 to 10 grams, but I've done it so much that I know what it looks like in my hands. There was this, I remember some like famous chef, they like tattooed circles in their hands so that they could always measure out what a teaspoon and a tablespoon was. And I was like, that's a lot of dedication to your craft. Okay. And now we're going to do 500 grams of flour to each one. And you want to use unbleached flour, unbleached bread flour, because the when you use bleached flour, all the natural bacteria that's needed for the fermentation process of sourdough has been killed, and so it won't rise for you if you use bleached flour. There we go. So 500 here. And then we're going to do 500 in this one, which is roughly around 3 cups. But again, your scale is going to be your friend in your sourdough journey. It leads to the most accurate measurements. Okay. Before we give that a good twist up, I'm going to take my blanched snap peas and we're just going to drain them real quick. That way they'll stop cooking because we want them to be tender, not mushy. Here we go. We're just going to leave them. We will saute them a little bit to give them a little extra flavor. Okay. And now I'm just going to use my dough whisk and we're just going to mix these guys up. And then we let it sit, and we'll do towards the end, dough needs to kind of sit for a few minutes before we do our first sets of stretch and folds, because you need it to kind of hydrate, the flour to hydrate. There we go. And that's when we'll add our inclusion in. So we've got our first one mixed up. And I know it looks sticky now, but as the gluten develops and the flour hydrates, it becomes less sticky. Sourdough is a higher hydration bread, so it is definitely stickier to work with. But that doesn't mean it's not going to turn out. You want it to be stickier because that's what's going to lead for a good bread, a good crumb. There we go. And also using warm water lends it to be a slightly stickier, but it does help that flour hydrate faster, which is why I like to use it. Okay. There we go. So we're going to just let these two sit until we're ready to do our stretch and folds and add in our inclusion. There we go. I'm going to start getting my little bit of bread there, my olive oil warming up for our flounder. So I'm just going to put a little good in here. You don't need too much, just kind of enough to kind of coat the bottom of your pan, because we're just going to be searing them back and forth until they have kind of like a nice kind of crispy sear on it. While that is searing up, we are going to prep our stuff for our inclusion. So I'm going to put a little bit of olive oil in this one. This is going to be for our inclusion. And we're going to mince up 1 onion. We're going to saute it, and then we're going to add some fresh garlic and some fresh sage. And we're going to saute that up because I do like to give it a little bit. I think the sauteing brings out the flavor better when you're adding it into your bread versus doing like a raw onion. So you want to get the caramelization. And I like to have smaller bits of onions versus bigger bits. So I'm going to do kind of a really small dice. I know some people like it stringy, but when I'm biting into my sourdough bread, I don't want to have a big old string of onion pull out. There we go. So just a nice little teeny tiny dice. We'll get these here and they'll have them caramelized up. That will help bring out that natural sweetness in them. And you're going to want to use either a yellow onion or a sweet onion for this. You're not going to want to use a red onion or a white onion because they don't have enough natural sugar in it. And then the red onion, while it is a sweeter one, doesn't have it's very bland when you cook it up. So yellow or sweet onions, those are going to be the best, or a Valdalia. So we're going over here, we're doing a nice little mince. And now I'm going to throw this in the olive oil. Let's see, let's get this heating. I'm going to have this kind of saute up. We're good there. And let's do our garlic. And while that's going, we're going to put in our fish. I think we're getting about, starting to hear the little pops on the oil. So I know we're getting to a nice high temperature. Let's get this cut and then we're going to add that. So I cut off the tops of and bottoms of my garlic, and then we're going to give it a quick peel. And we're going to add my first fillet of flounder in. This one's a really big guy. So we'll do, let's see if we have a nice thinner one here. You don't want to crowd your fish in there. You want them to be able to saute up with enough room to breathe. And again, these are going to cook up fairly quickly. About, 2 or so minutes on each side, 2 to 3, because they are thinner fillets. Let's get our garlic here. I would say I'm not a huge, I love fresh garlic, but I hate the whole work of peeling it. So typically I always use the jar garlic, but in my sourdough breads, I like the fresh garlic. I think it's much better. So I do the extra work to peel it and to mince it. And we don't need a terrible amount of them. I think this should be about good. Let's just get this last bit off. There we go. And we're going to give this a nice mince up. And we'll throw this in with our onions that are sauteing over there. And then we're going to throw in our sage. And that will be for our inclusion. Here we go. And I like to do kind of a coarse chop on it because I do like to get some of the nicer, bigger chunks of garlic in. So we're just going to toss these in. And then we hear our biscuits are about done. So we're going to go grab those. Give us a nice little stir. And let's grab my here. Beautiful. Look at these delicious things. And our potatoes are done. So we'll come back and grab those in just a second as well. So look at our beautiful biscuits. I'm going to set these right over here. And these are our cheddar bay biscuits, which we're going to do a nice coating on. And I'm going to grab those sweet potatoes out. Okay, here are our sweet potatoes that are nice and roasted up. And we're going to flip our fish. Look at this beautiful, nice little pan sear on it. It's right on there, and that's the herbs and the crusting roasting up with it. It's just delicious. Okay, let's give our onions and our garlic a little stir here. I'm going to turn that down. And then, when I was out in my garden this evening, we picked a bunch of fresh sage for our bread. And I'm going to throw this sage into that pan and saute it up a little bit first. We're going to give it a nice mince because, again, I don't want to have a huge leaf in my sourdough bread. Here we go. And I just do.
For the garlic, someone said that they buy a whole peeled garlic and chop it up and throw it in olive oil.
Oh, that's actually probably a really good idea because the olive oil will keep it fresh because it prevents, I'll have to do that because I'm like, I do like the taste of it. It's just such a pain. And I always buy those like big bulk bags of garlic because I do use them, especially when I'm doing like a slow cook marinade where I can throw it in without doing much peeling. That actually is a good idea. Okay. We've got our garlic and our onions. Sauteing them up nicely. We want them to be nice and caramelized for it. That will give a nice extra flavor. Okay. And let me grab a baking sheet. And this, we're going to put our first fillets out on here. I always like to put them on a paper towel. That just helps pick up any of the extra olive oil. But again, we've got our first 2 flounder fillets in. We're going to get our next one cooking up. But they don't take long. They are a thinner cut of fish, so they don't take as long to cook up. But they're going to be delicious. Okay, I'm going to take these herbs and I'm going to move them to a bowl here. And then we're going to saute up our things, but we have them nice and crispy and caramelized with our sage. That way they'll go in there. And the nice thing about it is they will like hydrate up and will be delicious for our bread. Okay, we're going to put a little bit of butter in here. And this has some nice garlic and onion flavors in it. I have it on low. And we're going to put our snap peas in here. And we're going to saute them up with that. And then while that is sauteing, we're going to melt our butter to brush over our biscuits. Because if anyone's had those Cheddar Bay biscuits, they're brushed with a nice herby butter. So we'll put that on in just a second. Let's take a peek at our rice, see how it is looking. Oh, nice, perfect. We're there. I'm going to pull out a bit, taste it. So I'm going to turn that off, let it finish steaming. Let's get our snap peas. We're going to toss them. Here we go. This is going to give them a nice little flavor. I'm going to add a little garlic salt and black pepper. But again, remember we cooked up the sage and the garlic and onions in here, so that it has like some nice flavor already.
Did you have a question? Do you have any suggestions for cooking ground deer meat besides hamburgers?
You can make, so I've been recently on a kick of doing meatballs and soups. And it helps keep it very flavorful and tender. I know deer meat can be a bit more tough. So I would recommend doing like a meatball and a soup. So I did an Italian meatball soup. There's the Italian wedding soup. I did a French onion soup with a meatball in it. So I would recommend doing that. That might work out well. And I have a couple of videos on the link in our page that have those kind of recipes for those soups with meatballs in it. But I think that would be a good way to use them. That will also keep them nice and kind of tender. Okay. See how this guy is going. There we go. And while those are cooking up, we are almost in the home stretch of everything. We're going to make a little cream pesto sauce for our fish. My daughter always likes to have a little sauce, so she's always like, ooh, what sauce are we having? So I'm going to use about, I want to say, 1/4 cup of cream. We're going to use some fresh lemon juice. Make sure there's no seeds. I'm going to squeeze that over it. This lemon juice is going to cause that cream to thicken up. Then we're going to add in a little bit of pesto. We're going to put that right over there. A little bit of pesto, about a teaspoon. And then I have some Thai basil. We're going to chop that up as well to go in there. And a little bit of green onion. And that will just be a nice little lovely sauce that we can top on our fish. I'm going to turn off my skillet over here. Got my butter melted. So let me chop up this Thai basil. I originally was going to do regular basil, but at the store, I did like a fresh order again because remember my rabbit didn't come in time for one of our Easter dinners, so I ordered some more lamb lollies to go with Easter, and they substituted out some fresh basil for Thai basil, but it's still going to be delicious. Okay, and let's grab a green onion. You don't need much. I'm going to take off the white part because that won't be good in our little dip since we are going to be eating it fresh.
And now might be a decent time to just let people know that I do read every comment to you after the stream.
Yes, my husband does read all the comments to me after the streams, the ones that he can't necessarily say because he tries to keep me on task because he knows that I sometimes go off on a talking tangent. But you know, he does. I get to hear all the great feedback everyone says or those things, and I try to answer all of your guys' questions when you comment because it does mean a lot to me. I do love it, especially the new ideas. If you guys throw in like a new idea, it's always fun to hear things because it makes you think outside of the box. These are just those seasoning packets that came with the biscuits. So I'm going to put those in there. They say they add the recipe on the box for the biscuits say like 1/2 cup of butter, which is way too much. Just use 1/4 cup. You don't need that much butter on it. We've got our flounder. Now we've got our last 2 fillets going in, and then we're gonna do our but this is our beautiful flounder head here, and then we're going to do our blanket on the word, our inclusion. There we go. So we're going to let this sit, and by letting it sit, the acid from the lemon is going to curdle that cream, and then it will be a nice sauce. Okay, we've got these tossed up. Let's do our inclusion real quick, and then we'll brush our biscuits, and dinner should be served. Okay, let's clean up this mess a little bit. Okay, so for our first one, we're just going to do our stretch and folds. Now, sourdough is sticky, so one way you can do it is to wet your hands, or another way you can do it is just to get a good amount of flour and then do your stretch and your fold. And as you wait, we do this every 20 to 30 minutes for the next 2 hours. Towards the end, you're going to have a really nice dough that's easier to work with, that won't be as sticky as it is in the beginning. Okay, so we've got our first one, and then like 20, 30 minutes, typically after we eat dinner, I do my next round of stretch and folds. This one is going to be our inclusion one. So I like to make a little well. And then I have our caramelized onions and sage in here. And what we're going to do is we're going to stretch and fold these. And these are nice, and they've got them nice and crispy and brown, which then they will kind of hydrate up some more in our recipe, but they're going to be absolutely delicious. And this is for our garlic, sage, and caramelized onion bread. And I think it's going to be absolutely delicious. We're going to do our stretch and folds here. I always like to do it during the first sets of stretch and folds. Some people like to add their inclusions towards the end, but I find that the flavors marry more into your dough when you start from the very beginning. Okay. Now, let me wash my hands, and I think we're going to be ready. I can serve up my first bunch. Okay. Oh, yes, we got to brush. Let's see if my flounder needs flipping first, and then we're going to brush. You always got to keep a good eye.
Do you have a question? When are you starting your chocolate sourdough starter?
This week. I had said it. I need to do it. I think I'm going to start it this week. I have a couple things I need to order from Amazon, so I'm going to get myself a new jar because I do really like having a specialized jar. It works well, but then I think I'm going to actually start it because there's so many recipes I want to try that I think is going to be better with a chocolate starter versus a traditional one. Like, I do make these delicious double chocolate sourdough muffins, and I was like, oh, with a chocolate sourdough, that would be delicious, or the sourdough brownies, or these chocolate cookies. So I'm like really excited. So that is on my to-do list to start up and to make. And I think I'm going to do it straight from scratch, because there is a way where you can take part of a starter that you already have and then over a couple of days marry it into a chocolate starter. But I think I'm going to start up from scratch and do it so that it has that whole rich chocolatey feeling for it. But here I'm brushing on our lovely herby butter onto our biscuits. This is going to just give you that extra pizzazz, so it makes them so delicious. And again, you got to use less butter than what the recipe says, because the recipe is just too much butter. Okay, this is cooled down. Let's start and get things about served up in just a second here. Here's our sweet potatoes. I always like to toss them in the oil again. And then let me give our kind of pesto cream sauce a nice stir.
You have a question for an inclusion loaf? If you're including jalapeno and cheddar, would you still add it in the beginning?
Yes, I haven't done jalapeno. I was thinking about doing it, but I haven't done it in a while. But I've always done it in the beginning, and we're big spice wusses, so I never add a lot of jalapenos when we do it. I add like just a teeny bit, but that's because we are spice wusses here. So it doesn't impact us. Now, if you love a lot of jalapeno, then maybe wait until the second or third. But I think it should be fine, because, if you're doing the cold proof, it's going to be sitting there anyways. I just think it mixes in better and incorporates better. Okay, guys, let's get some dinner served up here. We'll start out with our rice. So we have our yummy herby rice that we cooked it in a chicken broth with some fresh herbs. And I like to do the flounder on top of it. So we're going to get a nice fillet of flounder here.
Or are you going to cut up the melon after?
Yeah, I'll probably cut up the melon there. I realized, I was like, I haven't done it, but I'm running kind of out of time. I'll typically probably start having my kids here, and they'll start scooping up, and then I will give them slices of melon as they come to eat. So we're going to do our sweet potatoes, our wonderful snap peas, and then we're going to do we've got our cheddar bay biscuit.
What type
and
of rice did you use?
I use jasmine rice, and this is our kind of our pesto herby cream sauce. So again, we made our flounder with an herb crust that we pan seared over our chicken herb rice, our cheddar bay biscuits, blanched and seared or sauteed snap peas, and our oven roasted sweet potatoes with oregano for a delicious dinner. And then we'll either, if we don't do the hammy melon tonight, because they do have pineapple and grapes in the fridge, so we'll see, we'll cut it up tomorrow. But guys, thank you again for joining us. Don't forget to like and subscribe. I try to do live cooking shows every single day, show you what I'm cooking for my family, and hopefully teach you guys something along the way. And again, all of our videos we do upload to the link on our page. So if you ever want to cook a recipe or watch them, that's the best way to do it. Again, thanks so much. Don't forget to like and subscribe.